Hello and thanks for watching this Cloud9 ERP Solutions video and subscribing to our YouTube channel. Imagine as a manager and owner, you have a product that for whatever reason you pay too much for, or at least you paid a much different amount than you normally pay for it. So in Acumatica, we have anomaly detection, and that gives us the ability to detect anything that's out of the norm. When you think about how your company grows, you hire people to take on tasks that you maybe did from the very beginning. And now you have these new people and you want to be able to trust them to do the work that they are supposed to do, but you can't think of everything. And for these anomalies, now you understand what's going on, the important aspects of the business that you want to know about so that you can go back and train harder for. Or maybe you have a department of 3 or 4 people. So now you're way removed. You have a manager and 3 people underneath them. And in that department, new people come in and out. You might have training. The training doesn't always work. Sometimes things get missed in the training, the onboarding. And so now this gives you the ability to get your hands around the most important elements of your business, the anomalies of the business that you need to jump in right away so that there's not these cost overruns. So right now in this example, we're showing a purchase order. We're ordering 5 of these laptops, and normally the unit cost is $247 and change. Now, Acumatica has a setting for that. It brings up the last cost. There's a bunch of preferences as to when it updates the last cost. But right now it's $247, and that's our purchase order. And so if we were to continue with this purchase order and receive it and create a bill, then that's the price we would use. But let's say, for example, something went wrong and all of a sudden we had a much bigger unit cost on this, maybe $500. And based on the pattern, based on the date range and the timeline, it's just something that stood out. So in this example, we're going to detect that anomaly and we're going to create a business event letting you know that it's occurred. So let's get started. So the first thing we need to do is to create or look for an inquiry screen that has this detailed information in it. So this is purchase order line. That's the name of the table. And PO line is attached to purchase orders. And that's what we're going to look at. We're going to look for a generic inquiry that maybe has this data already. Alternatively, if we wanted to really get into depth, we could actually use a table that only reflects a change or an anomaly when it becomes a transaction. And so a purchase order becomes a purchase receipt, but that's really for the effect of the inventory. And then when it becomes a bill, maybe we want to detect it then. For this example, we're just concerned about the purchase order. Later on, you can create more complex scenarios using more complex generic inquiries. So the first thing we're going to do is look for a generic inquiry that has the PO line. Again, that's the table. How do I know that? Well, if you inspect the element, you can do that here, or if you press Control-Alt and you have the rights, you can look at something like unit cost, and it'll give you the element properties, and that's how I know that the table here in question is PO line. And so first we're going to go to generic inquiries. If we can't find it, we'll create it. And we'll search for a PO line. And there's nothing here. So let's search for line. Maybe we can find something like that. And I see DB PO line. So let's open that up and see what it looks like. It's got our PO line table in there. And if we look at the results grid, it's got a few columns of information in there, but it doesn't have the cost. So let's add the cost. We want the unit cost of the line. And let's save it and take a look at it. And if we scroll around, these are all subcontracts. We don't really care about those. So let's create a filter here. where the order number starts with PO. Okay, so now we have a bunch of purchase orders and we can see the cost. Now let's go back to our generic inquiry, and we have an option here for detect anomalies. So we'll turn it on, and when we turn it on, we now have this tab, anomaly detection. So the field we want to analyze is going to be that unit cost, our timeline. We don't have a date field here, so let's go back to results grid and let's add a date. We'll save it, go back, and now we can pick the order date here. That's our timeline. And we don't want to see everything analyzed because the costs are going to vary. As we know, the costs change. But what is consistent is the item. So we want to group by the item so that if the same item has a big varying cost, then that'll get detected. So we'll go back to generic inquiry, and we're going to group by inventory ID. We'll save it. And now the next thing is the update frequency. So we have the ability to have the
Before
system
I continue,
automatically
only
run
15% of you are
every
subscribed.
day, every week,
Hit that
or
subscribe
monthly.
button
It'll create
now
the
to get
schedule for
notified
us.
about new
But in this
videos and
case,
events.
we want to go through the process, so I'm going to turn this to on demand. So we'll save it, and we'll view our inquiry. Okay, so everything looks the same. We don't seem to have the filter that we created earlier, which makes sense. I didn't save it. So let's create it again. And we want the order number starting with PO. And let's save the filter. And now we have that there. So now we want to go and run the detect anomalies. This will show up because we said on demand and we turned everything on. So that brings us to a screen which shows all of your generic inquiries that could potentially be detected, an anomaly detected, where you have that setting turned on. And so then you can check this box. Notice the scheduler up here. You can run this, you can run all of them. And we'll click process. And so what this step does is it takes all of the records, the rows, it groups them together, and it uploads them to the AI detection server. So you can see the date it's uploaded, the number of rows, the rows skipped, the groups. And at this point, it's actually running a calculation on this set of records. So typically this takes a couple of minutes. Acumatica has said if you have about 1 million records, it should take a few hours. But let's run execute next step. And you can see it downloaded the records and then completed it. So now if we go back to our inquiry screen and do a refresh, what we see are there are some records that it skipped over. And we have a couple of columns here now. So this is our unit cost for that particular row and that particular purchase order. You can see this new column, anomaly severity. So these are all normal. And if we turn on our columns, we can also include the difference from expected and the confidence level. So if we scroll over, you have the ability to mark all the records that you've selected, you've checked, and that you want to move on from. So you can use that for filters. But additionally, because we have this anomaly severity, we can click here and notice the different options in this record set. So we have normal, we'll uncheck that. We have medium, significant, and is empty. Again, empty are the records that Acumatica ignored for whatever reason. So we'll unselect that. And now we're going to look at medium and significant. And what we see here is conditional formatting that shows us in a light pink a medium anomaly. And then we have a significant anomaly. And so now we know that so what we know here is that the cost on this particular purchase order was $10,000. We purchased it for $10,000. But the expected value was $12,425. And then we have a significant anomaly. And so what we know here is that the cost on this particular purchase order was $10,000. We purchased it for $10,000. But the expected value was $12,425. So we're off by $2,425, and the anomaly detection is saying, wait a sec, that's a significant anomaly from the norm. Now, this is a big item. You might be okay with that. But essentially, if you look at these items, you can see there is quite the variance from it. And so what we can do additionally is we can create a business event that anytime there's a brand new record that has an anomaly, and that will send us an alert in Acumatica. So let's go to business events. We'll give it a name for lack of creativity. The screen name will be line. And so that's this one right here. We'll change this to trigger by schedule. That's how it'll work. It doesn't work by trigger by record change. We'll click the plus button here, and now we'll pick the table GIML result, and we're looking for a severity that contains medium or significant. We'll say not contains, but we'll say equals here. And it looks like it's turned off. We need to add the operation here, because we need to make sure that this is or. Let's close the brackets up, and we'll create our schedule. And we'll put in here every 10 minutes. We'll save it. Under subscribers, I created a subscriber that sends out an email. So basically it says, purchase order has an anomaly unit cost, has an anomaly unit cost for the inventory ID with a description with a new unit cost of. So now we'll create a purchase order, a brand new one. We'll paste it. We'll remove the hold. Approve it. And we really don't need to do all that. We could have just left it on hold, because as you recall, we're just looking at the PO line table. So it doesn't need to go through a workflow. That's the way we've done it. And again, that might be ideal for you because you want to know before the purchase order gets through its workflow that there's an anomaly there. And now if we go over to all emails to see that email being sent out, you can see the system has fired off emails to the admin. You could have sent it to anybody. If we had a purchasing manager for a specific item, we could have used that email address also. But we have these anomaly unit costs all over the place. We'll click on it, open it up. And it says the purchase order has an anomaly unit cost for inventory ID. It gives a description of it with a new unit cost of $385,000. Now we could also put a link to the anomaly detection area, or the generic inquiry for that matter. But if we refresh here, we can now see all of the anomalies and essentially what this alert notification is telling us. Now, you can also build out your subscription email to be an entire table so that, it's inside a table view, an HTML table that shows the listing of all of the items rather than send it out through a individual email for every single one. And to do that, you would, instead of raising the event on each record, you'd say group of records, and then you'd pick the field that you're grouping by. So that's anomaly detection. You can see the power of it. We just picked a purchase order cost line item that was an anomaly. But when you think about all the different data in Acumatica, understanding these anomalies and being able to get information on them or an alert on them right away can be extremely powerful. So hopefully you found this video useful. And if you did, please click the like button. And if you have any questions about this or anything else Acumatica, feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you and help you out with your own project. Thanks again, and have a great day.